Hello and welcome back to Learn the Bible in a Year for March 23rd, 2026. Today is National Puppy Day. So if you have a dog, give them an extra treat today. If you don't have a dog, maybe just go to the park and stare at other people's dogs. It's only slightly creepy. Today we're going to be covering laws about offerings, a massive rebellion in the desert, Jesus calling his first disciples, and a reminder not to fret over evil people. Alrighty, let's dive right in. So, jumping into our Old Testament reading, yesterday we saw the Israelites rebel after hearing the spies' report, leading to their punishment of wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. Today, God gives them laws for when they eventually enter the Promised Land, followed by another major rebellion. God starts off by giving the people instructions for the offerings they are to make once they finally settle in the land He is giving them. This is actually a huge moment of grace. Even though the current generation has been told that they will die in the wilderness, God is assuring the next generation the promise still stands. He hasn't abandoned them. He lays out specifics for grain and drink offerings that are to accompany their animal sacrifices. And interestingly, he makes a point to say that these rules apply equally to native born Israelites and the foreigner living among them. So there's one standard for everyone. That would have been very odd in this day and age. Then God makes a critical distinction between unintentional sins and intentional, defiant sins. If someone sins by mistake, there's a path for atonement. If someone sins promiscuously, the Hebrew word here is rum, Ruwm, which means to be high or exalted, picturing someone sinning with a high hand or a raised fist against God. That person is to be cut off from the community. It's a picture of arrogant, unrepentant rebellion. We see a tragic example of this right away, unfortunately. A man is found gathering wood on the Sabbath, directly violating God's command. Because he was being deliberate, high handed act of defiance here, he faces the ultimate penalty. God then tells his people to put tassels on the corners of their garments to remind them of his commands, so that they will not wander after the lust of their own hearts and eyes. But of course, the rebellion does not stop there. A man named Korah, Korah, along with Dathan, Abiram, and 250 prominent leaders rise up against Moses and Aaron. Korah is a Levite, but he's not satisfied with his assigned duties. He wants the priesthood too. They accuse Moses and Aaron of exalting themselves above the assembly, claiming that everyone is holy. Now, a question you might have here is, why was Korah's rebellion dealt with so severely? Well, it wasn't just a petty leadership dispute here. It was a direct attack on God's appointed order. Korah and his followers essentially saying that they knew better than God about how he should be approached. They were letting their pride and ambition blind them to the incredible privilege they already had in serving at the tabernacle. Moses tells them to bring their censers with incense the next day, and God will show who he has chosen. When the time comes, the glory of the Lord appears, and God tells Moses and the congregation to step back from the tents of the rebellious men. In a terrifying display of judgment, the earth opens up and swallows Korah, Dathan, Abiram, and everything that belongs to them. It's a stark reminder that God takes his holiness and the leadership he establishes very seriously. All right, now jumping into the New Testament here, last time in Luke, we saw Jesus rejected in his hometown of Nazareth and then driving out a demon in Capernaum. Today, we see his healing ministry expand and his call to some very tired fishermen. So Jesus leaves the synagogue and goes to Simon Peter's house, where Peter's mother in law is suffering from a high fever. Jesus simply rebukes the fever and it leaves her immediately. She doesn't just slowly recover, she gets up right away and starts serving them. As the sun sets, people bring all their sick and demon possessed friends and family to Jesus. He lays his hands on them and heals them, silencing the demons who try to announce who he is, meaning the Son of God. Remember, Jesus is still keeping his full identity under wraps at this point. The next morning, he slips away to a desolate place to pray, but the crowds find him and keep trying to keep him from leaving. But Jesus tells them he must preach the good news of the kingdom to other towns as well, because that is why he was sent. The Greek word for must here is the word dei, D-E-I, which means it is absolutely necessary or even binding. Jesus isn't just following a good idea here, he is driven by a divine imperative, a necessity established by God's decree. Later, Jesus is standing by the lake Gennesaret. This is also called the Sea of Galilee. And the crowd is pressing in so hard to hear him that he gets into Simon Peter's boat and asks him to push out a little way from the shore. After he finishes teaching, he tells Peter to launch out into the deep water and let down his nets. Now, Peter is exhausted. He and his partners have been fishing all night and caught absolutely nothing. But out of respect, he says, "Because you say so, I will let down the nets." When they do so, they catch such a massive amount of fish that the nets begin to break and the boats start to sink. When Peter sees this, he falls at Jesus' knees and says, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." The Greek word for sinful here is harmatolos, meaning someone who falls short of the mark. In the presence of Christ's divine power, Peter is suddenly overwhelmed by his own unworthiness. But Jesus doesn't leave him. Instead, he tells Peter not to be afraid and that from now on, he will become fisher of men or catching people. Peter, James, and John leave everything, the biggest catch of their lives, and follow him. Shortly after, Jesus heals a man covered in leprosy, meaning he touched something that is untouchable, and then he withdraws again to the wilderness to pray. Alrighty, we got some Psalms to read today, and here's how it goes. Fret not yourself because of evildoers. Be not envious of wrongdoers, for they will soon fade like the grass and wither like the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will act. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light and your justice as the noonday. Be still before the Lord and await patiently for him. Fret not yourself over the one who prospers in his way, over the man who carries out evil devices. Refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself, it tends only to evil. For the evildoer shall be cut off, but those who wait for the Lord shall inherit the land. Great scriptures there. All right, just a quick word from our sponsor. This show is sponsored by Covenant Security Equipment, which is a Christian-owned company who partners with building contractors who build with safety in mind. They sell things like bullet-resistant windows and secure transaction systems and drive-through installations and much, much more. If this is interesting to you, go to covenantsecurityequipment.com. And also don't forget to pick up a copy of the Learn the Bible in a Year workbook. I did write this book and I wrote it for you. The digital copy is totally for free. The link to that is in the show notes. You could also pick up the paperback copy if you prefer. The link to that is also in the show notes. All right. What was your main takeaway from today's reading? My main takeaway was Peter's response to Jesus's miracle. Now, Peter makes a ton of mistakes throughout the Gospels. He's kind of famous for it. But in this case, I just love his heart towards Jesus. Jesus does this massive miracle. He realizes that Jesus is the Holy One of God and that he is not. And so he just says it as it is. He says, I'm a sinful man. I am unworthy. But Jesus, in his mercy, picks Peter up and says, even though you are a sinful man, he's not denying that, but even though you are a sinful man, I will make you into a fisher of people. I'm going to make you into a great man. This is the way that Jesus does things. He doesn't take men who are great and make them just stay great. He makes men who need a savior, which is all of us. He makes those people great. That's the total nature of Jesus. Alrighty, well, that is the episode for today, and I will see all of you cool cats again here tomorrow.